The birth rate is plummeting to hell. And I am here in the United States, but I watch different countries globally because there are some countries that are ahead of us that have a worse birth rate than us. So when we watch countries like South Korea, China, what's going on in Greece, Japan, there are different countries that have things going on because of the birth rates. The schools that are closing down, the real estate market, houses sitting empty. There are so many implications that are going on because of the birth rate, and we are just marching right down that exact same path. And we're marching down that same path because these countries' leaders don't have the capacity to see where other leaders have gone wrong and change course. Absolutely not. They are not very smart people. Anyways, anybody who has been watching my birth rate stories and commentary would know that this makes sense that this is about to happen. This is an article from Newsweek saying US housing market faces big demographic shift because a bunch of the older people are about to die. Baby boomers are the largest sector of people, the largest demographic of people, and the younger people are not having babies. So there are about to be a bunch of empty houses because single people or people that are having one kid being one and done don't need a big old house. So the housing market is shifting. Let's look at this article. The U.S. housing market is about to get hit by a big demographic shift, according to real estate analyst Nick Gurley, as the number of deaths in the country is expected to exceed the number of births by 2033. This gloomy prediction comes from a report released earlier this year by the Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, which also said that the U.S. population growth rate is expected to wane over the next 3 decades, increasing by only 0.2% compared to the 0.9% reported from 1975 to 2024. Why it matters. For decades, the country has faced a chronic shortage of homes, with inventory unable to keep up with relatively stable and even growing demand from buyers. Younger generations have especially struggled to step on the property ladder, unable to prevail in bidding wars with older, wealthier buyers, and even to save enough to put down the money necessary for a down payment due to rising housing costs. Now, also imagine if we have a chronic shortage of homes and we're running out labor of the people who work in construction. How is that going to impact the shortage of houses? It's going to continue to impact it because, like I said, our country is not particularly smart. Experts believe that the current challenges to home ownership, which include higher home prices, mortgage rates, property taxes, and home insurance premiums, are forcing many Americans to delay having their own families, exacerbating the issue of falling birth rates. For Gurley, founder and CEO of the real estate analytics platform Reventure app, this demographic shift could deeply upset the U.S. housing market, leading to a permanent shrinking in demand and an increase in available inventory. According to Gurley, more deaths than births in the U.S. by 2032 and 2033 will lead to a structurally lower homebuyer demand, as declining births and family formation lowers the need and urgency for young people to buy houses. Meanwhile, there will be more inventory on the market as incrementally more deaths and the aging out of the baby boomer generation increases listings, Gurley wrote on X. Freddie Mac estimates that by 2035, there will be roughly 9 million fewer baby boomer homeowner households in the country, a drop that will lead to a significant increase in inventory in the U.S. market. This will have a disinflationary and or deflationary impact on home prices over the long term, Gurley said, essentially making home buying cheaper across the country. The impact of this demographic shift, Gurley said, will be felt in every state from California to Florida, no matter how strong their population growth currently is. But some areas will feel the pain sooner, he said. Florida, for example, is already facing an organic contraction with 4% fewer births, he reported. Fewer children in the country will also lead to a change in the type of housing Americans will be seeking. The reason is one of the main relative advantages conferred by buying a house compared to renting is the space and stability provides for raising a family. So, if there's fewer people raising a family or looking to raise a family, there will be less demand for the 4 and 5 bedroom homes that's over 3,000 square feet, and thus lower the demand to purchase. On the other hand, there could be an increase in demand for smaller homes to buy. In general, McMansion style neighborhoods probably won't fare as well based on the current trends in demographics. What people are saying. Gurley wrote on X about the incoming demographic shift. Many participants in the housing market are ignoring this issue as if it does not provide a positive outlook for home prices and is also still another 6 or 7 years off. However, serious home buyers and investors should dig in and understand how the demographic decline will impact their area. The CBO's report published earlier this year said, in CBO's projections, the rate of population growth generally slows over the next 30 years from an average of 0.4% a year between 2025 and 2035 to an average of 0.1% a year between 2036 and 2055. Net immigration becomes an increasingly important source of population growth. However, we live in a racist and basically xenophobic society where we do not want outsiders. We do not want the coloreds coming here. So that's really going to impact net immigration. Currently, we're making people leave. So how is that going to actually work? Anyways, it says without immigration, the population will shrink beginning in 2033, in part because fertility rates are projected to remain too low for a generation to replace itself. In essence, the birth rate is plummeting to hell. Yay. What happens next? With the American population aging, the U.S. demographic future will depend in part on immigration from outside the country. The CBO report states that net immigration will likely account for the U.S. population growth between 2033 and 2055. Gurley admitted that things could shift over the coming decades and that the country's demographic sunset is not a given. It's very interesting that Newsweek and this person named Gurley are not examining the fact that we're doing bloody mass deportations right now and that we are telling people to leave and deporting people. So how are we going to have a positive net immigration number? This really doesn't make sense because they're not examining things that are happening in politics right now. Note that in the 40s and 50s in the US, a massive baby boom occurred where the fertility rate soared by 56% over 2 decades. Some of that was a return to normal after the Great Depression. Some of it was societal. Perhaps something like that could happen again. We don't know for sure. However, the current trends suggest a continuation of the slowdown in births. This article is wholly incomplete. There are so many things going on right now with the way states are stripping women's rights, the way Medicaid is making sure that there's no labor and delivery offices or hospitals, the way rural hospitals are closing hospitals. There is not going to be a return to a birth rate boom. Is not going to be a boom. We're marching towards Great Depression 2.0 because of Donald Trump and these tariffs. And all of this works together. There's not going to be a housing boom because right now people are food insecure and foreclosures are high. People are living off of credit cards. So some of this stuff is just actually kind of ridiculous. We're marching towards a Great Recession. Of course, there's going to be houses that are sitting empty and available because people just don't have the money. I need people to really start to flesh out some of these articles with their brain power. Use your big logical man brain to say things a little bit more in depth. But y'all go ahead and chime in on this one. So I was just talking about how the demographic shift, how the declining birth rates was going to impact the real estate market. Well, this unemployment situation, the labor market, the economy is going to further exacerbate the birth rate. So let's talk about this right here. All of these news stories going on are going to impact the birth rates. Politics will continue to impact birth rates. So many of these things go hand in hand. So this is from Bloomberg. It says, Americans with four-year degrees now comprise a record 25% of unemployed workers. Key takeaways from this article. Americans with four-year college degrees comprise a record portion of total unemployment, underscoring a sharp slowdown in white-collar hiring this year. The unemployment rate for bachelor degree holders rose 2.8% in September, up a half a percentage point from a year earlier, with more than 1.9 million Americans aged 25 and older with at least a bachelor's degree who were unemployed. Rising unemployment among the college educated should further fuel AI-related job loss fears, according to Michael Ferroli, the chief U.S. economist at J.P. Morgan Chase & Co. Government shutdown delayed monthly figures published Thursday by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics showed the unemployment rate for bachelor degree holders rose to 2.8% in September, up a half a percentage point from a year earlier. Other levels of education, by contrast, registered little or no increase over the same period. So this graph is college-educated job loss rises. White-collar slowdown hits four-year degrees. So obviously, in this case, an increase in job losses is not a good thing. That means more and more people are out of a job. There were more than 1.9 million Americans aged 25 and older with at least a bachelor's degree who were unemployed in September. 1 in 4 of the total number of unemployed. Before 2025, the ratio never reached such a high in data going back to 1992. This part is where it's going to impact the birth rate. Younger, recent college grads have also been struggling to find work. They're going to be struggling to get their foundation going. So they're going to be slower to launch into the world, which means they're going to be slower to pair up if they can even pair up. Everything going on in the economy and labor market and politics, it impacts people. So for the people that say, I don't do politics, politics is doing everybody right now. Rising unemployment among the college educated should further fuel AI-related job loss fears, Michael Fiorelli, the chief U.S. economist at J.P. Morgan Chase & Co., said Thursday in a note following the release. The milestone comes amid a raft of high-profile layoff announcements from major corporations including Amazon, Target, and Starbucks. A recent report by the outplacement firm Challenger, Gray & Christmas, indicated job cut announcements last month were the highest for any October in more than 20 years, fueled by plans to replace positions with AI. Verizon Communications, Inc. on Thursday became the latest to announce wide-ranging cuts, saying it would let go more than 13,000 employees in a bid to shrink its non-union workforce by as much as 20%. For the new graduates from college, they did get hit by a bit of a perfect storm, Fed Reserve Bank of New York President John Williams said Friday. Normally, college graduates are being swept into the labor market as they get out of college, and that has not happened as much this year, he said in answering questions after a speech in Santiago, Chile. Thursday's BLS figures showed young Americans are bearing the brunt of the recent rise in joblessness. The unemployment rate for those between the ages of 20 and 24 was 9.2% in September, up from 2.2 percentage points from a year earlier, an increase of a magnitude not seen historically outside of recessions. The fact that this says outside of recessions is ignoring the fact that we are, in fact, in a recession. Unemployment rates for older Americans, meanwhile, remain below 4% and have seen smaller increases in recent months. The report also revealed just two sectors, healthcare and social assistance and leisure and hospitality, have accounted for more than 100% of job growth so far in 2025. They've added a combined 690,000 positions this year. While excluding those two, national employment has declined by about 6,000. The professional and technical sector, service sector, which includes industries like computer systems design, management, and technical consulting, and scientific research and development, also registered an outright decline in headcount over the first 9 months of the year. Right here, the fact that it says healthcare and social assistance and leisure and hospitality, those are the sectors that are growing. Meanwhile, we have this government that is basically saying that many of the professions that fall in these categories are no longer considered professional degrees. There are so many different things that are going on right now in politics that it's going to have reverberations. Also, on top of that, healthcare is going to be impacted by the Medicaid cuts. All of this is going to be the perfect storm. There should be nobody right now thinking about having babies. Already, the 20 somethings, their birth rates have been declining. They have been declining over the years. But it's going to see an even more dramatic drop over this administration. It will, because there's so much volatility, because we never know what Donald Trump is going to do. He wakes up like a sleepy 4-year-old. He wakes up like an angry, sleepy 4-year-old, and he makes policy decisions based on that. And so our economy is never going to quite get its footing with a toddler in chief that is making decisions via social media that impacts everybody, and nobody actually thinking through many of these things. All this volatility is going to say, guard your wombs, ladies, and make sure that you realize and understand family planning is financial planning. And this right now is not the best time to be popping out some babies. It's not going to be the best time to buy a house, especially if the housing market is about to plummet, because there's going to be a wider range of houses that come onto the market. All right, y'all. Let me know how you think about all of this working together. Join the conversation. Let me know what you think. And as always, let the birth rate plummet to hell.